Cradle, The Rise of the Chosen, Chapter 22, Part 1. Josh brought Takuma back to the north end of the Palatial Beach, and the day was already in full swing. Takuma was walking the beach alone, intermittently looking out over the sea at the barges and the fishing boats. He was tired, more so mentally than physically, but a good nap in his bed would do him enough good to address the chaos of Crown Reba's arrival with his staff and various underlings. However, what would be more taxing is strategizing with Gianoa on how they could use this visit and turn of events to bring the father to the people. He didn't know exactly when that became his mission, but it was rather familiar now. Dozens of yards from his palatial residence, he was entranced by the beauty of the colorful buildings and floral bushes and trees in the clear sky. There was just peace in the air, and he dared not pass it off as normal, so he took his time and walked home slowly on the stone avenue. He opened the door to the main foyer of his house, and Gianoa was on her way out of the home with a blunt look on her face. He could smell freshly baked pita in the air. The chef must have made a batch earlier in the day. Di molo, hanti, Josh, elogie, renije, hona jo. Josh told me to take you along on this next mission, Gianoa explained. Bordi she. I'm tired, Takuma complained. Poon chi luminal. He said you say that. Nieti, ulio, di ju or Julia. We have our orders, she reiterated. Takuma stopped in the doorway and gave his wife an assessing look and lowered his gaze to her feet and took a deep breath and tried to exhale the drag that had a hold on his consciousness, and he repeated that a couple of more times and then looked back up to his queen. Ku'ulimini, aya, pujote. Explain this mission to me, Takuma asked. They took the Queen's black ship out to sea to reach the postal village of Trent. For the entire continent of Old South America, Trent was responsible for 85% of all mail and parcel delivery. They were a business-minded people and stood often protected by more enterprising nations. Gianoa's kingdom had a large share of stock in Trent and had also in the past protected Trent from neighboring villages looking to take over, and sometimes the rare pirate incursions. Oddly enough, they were neither followers of the six gods or pagan, if the two were differentiated. In the natural order of the economy of the region, large amounts of capital or money flowed through Trent. They had a seat at the proverbial table in talks of major collaborative legislation or order shifts in housekeeping. For over 30 years, Trent hadn't had any contest of his ways of operation from the inside as well as the outside. Takuma wondered if things were changing because of his and Gianoa's, but truly Josh's, movement. They stood on the deck at the bow and were leaning on the railing as the ship dipped slightly and cut through the waves. Ho'ejote, tul me erot, kolinami, volta. Yeah, the fleet is mobilized behind us, Gianoa informed. Golgi, ne tul erote finoge. But we can't do anything until we get there, Takuma inferred. Gianoa nodded and sipped her iced green tea. Namol, Josh. Tantul, oil. Josh left it all up to you, he asked. Din no maj. I guess you could say so, she answered. Lawrence Plateau. Jinnatul on pome. Lawrence Plateau said they just want diplomatic talks, he asked. She nodded and then shook her head. Fejo naatul Josh minno poligi. Josh said they aren't for talking, they're ready for war, she explained. They looked at each other and found something reassuring in each other's faces, and then Takuma put his arm around his wife and they walked back to the lower decks to be in more comfort before they had to do any more delegations and planning. Takuma still had no time to rest because he was busy with the task of learning and remembering all of the major players of Trent, as well as what was gathered about Lawrence. When he felt he had it all in grasp and down to memory, he took a nap, only to be awakened that they were close to port a mere 15 minutes later. On the deck, it was possible to see that there were over 50 river and stream mouths surrounding the island nation. Takuma assumed they all snaked their way through the forest and the plains and deserts, and there were about 5 huge main bridges in gray-white concrete that wheeled out and over Trent. It was truly a grand sight. There were hundreds of vessels and even some aircraft milling around the ports, ocean, and island. Gianoa must have seen it before because the way she looked about this great sight was sharp and focused, Takuma surmised from his Itoriyama. Gianoa's ship was headed for the Royal Gate, a jet-black stone dock with huge lifts that spanned 10 stories and a bevy of beautiful yachts and super ships which probably could circle the globe in one load. Gianoa stood next to Takuma closer than she just was and whispered, "Hintu ul, Pt1 diet Itoriyama." "Keep your Itoriyama looking around at all times," she said. "See it, Jul? Get me?" she asked. "Abe." "Yeah, babe," he answered. They made it to their lift, and the black steel arms scooped them up with the water that was around them and rotated them flat, yet upward, and put them on level 3 into the internal waterway inside the island, and the wheelman guided them to a nice and neat-looking steel dock, and Takuma and Gianoa both sighed in relief. Their party was waiting for them on the gangway, and all were dressed in royal beiges and gold with burnt gold caps. Gianoa made sure to smile as the Trent designees stood at the bottom of the incline. Takuma smiled just enough, but was looking for anything to give him an idea of where he could do the best work. The Trent greeters at the dock weren't any of the important players. They were pleasant-looking staff meant to butter them up, he thought. That beside, he and Gianoa played the game and bowed to the staff and informed their own to wait at the dock for the time being. Even the security detail was left behind, not necessarily out of overconfidence, but because of the faith in their work that the king and queen had. "Mi Rialani Satulu Regja Wisnuli." "Greetings, king, queen, and king," said the brown man and darker woman. They both stood at 6 feet tall, just a little shorter than Takuma, but there was something clean about them, meaning that the whiteness of their teeth were exceptional. The press of their jackets and slacks were sharp and crisp, and their black shoes shined like mirrors.